Hello, everybody, and welcome to EarthShift Global's webinar with Bea Boccalandro. We're delighted to have her today, and just wanted to let you know we are going to be doing things a little differently. As Bea is such an integrated person, she wants to integrate with you and have you respond. So as you're viewing, and if you would like to when it's time to respond to Bea, if you will go to the bottom of your screen, and you will see this black bar come up, and it shows the participants, and then it shows both the participants and a chat feature. And on the chat feature to the right, you can hit chat and answer Bea that way, or you can answer Bea, and then during Bea's presentation, if you would send to me, Holly Harris, just your questions for Bea at the end, I will save them and ask them for her, and we can carry on from there. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Bea to our Brown Bag webinar. Welcome, Bea. Carry on.
Thank you, Holly. I'm thrilled to be part of this series. So welcome, everybody. Holly, I think you need to stop sharing. Oh, there we go. Perfect. All right. Just give me a moment to bring up my my slides so that you're not just listening to my voice drone on, but you actually have some visual fun. So we're going to talk about job purposing today. And just think of work and purpose. And I'm going to bring those two concepts together for us. I would like to start with a question for you. So what makes you happy? What brings joy? Now, usually it's a list of things. Just think of one thing on your list right now that brings you joy. Keep it PC. And now I'm going to ask you, we already know it brings you happiness. Does it also give you higher confidence, do you think? Does it bring you higher health? Does it make it less likely that you will be depressed? Does it, if you have chronic back pain, for example, would it lower the level of pain? So you're saying, oh, now it's no longer a 7, it's a 5. Does it strengthen your immune system? Does it make it more likely that you are going to die at any given point? Does it lower the number of negative emotions like fear and dread and anxiety? Does it make you more engaged at work? Does it give you higher retention at work, do you think? Do you think it makes you a stronger performer or less likely to burn out? Does it make you a more productive worker? If you answered yes to all of these, if you would in the chat, this is what Holly warned about, write in what it is that you came up with. What was your item that brought you joy? There are, for most of you, exercise does all these things. The other, working in my garden. Okay, great. That's a good one. It's exercise, and it's also very linked to our primal need to survive, because you're bringing vegetables in from the wild, right? There's another thing that we can do in our lives that brings us all these things that we don't really hear about much. Now, we know about exercise and we know about being with our families, and that all makes sense. As humans, family is very important. And also, as humans, we know that our bodies are now designed to move, and when we don't move, all these bad things happen to us. What we're less aware about is that when we do what scientists called pro-social behavior, all these things happen to us, and it's for similar reasons. Evolutionarily, we are designed to help each other out. Otherwise, we don't survive. A mom polar bear can bring down, a bison and rear two cubs on her own. As humans, we cannot do any of those things. We need others in order to survive. So what evolution has done, as it has done with exercise, as it has done with gathering food, as it has done with serving our families, it has wired us to perform our best, to feel most rewarded, to feel most fulfilled when we do what scientists call pro-social behavior, which is when we help others, when we help a cause, when we volunteer, when we give. So all of this is backed up, and you have at least one citation for each. So I'll just choose one here. For example, they really did look at the white blood cell count of Harvard University students after a pro-social behavior, which had to do with watching a movie of Mother Teresa, and their immune system really did go up when they were encountered with doing good for others. Similarly, a Cornell University longitudinal study for 30 years looked at women and health, and originally they thought, well, these women that, in addition to having kids, and some of them had jobs, this started many years ago, so many of them did not have jobs, but those that go volunteer, they're wearing themselves out. They're going to be less healthy. Well, what they learned was exactly the opposite. Much more likely to be vibrant, much less likely to have a whole slew of illnesses, from cancer to cardiovascular disease, if you go out there and essentially help others or help a cause. So what if you had work that did this? What if you managed to do pro-social good from work? I mean, let's face it, we spend half our waking lives at work. Shouldn't that be the place where we do our most meaningful contributions? And that's what I'm going to talk about. The question is, might work that makes a positive social impact bring you all these things? Health, well-being, happiness, productivity? And the answer is yes, it will. So let's imagine that you make a positive social impact from your job. This might be you help reduce hunger out there, you help the environment be more sustainable. It might be that you help reduce the dropout rate. You make a positive social impact from your job. You know what? I take that back. Let's instead imagine that you make a positive impact, social impact from your job every week. So this is on an ongoing basis. You do this. Now I have a question for you. Is it feasible for you to do this right now at your current job? Every week have a social impact. So now if you go to that bar that Holly told us about, you should be able to, you see participants, hit there, because I'm just going to ask you a quick question. And now there's a button that says raise hand. So I'm going to ask you, if this is highly feasible right now, go ahead and raise your hand. Okay. Those of you who raise your hands, it would be great in chat if you said, that probably means that it's happening right now, that you feel you have a positive social impact from your job right now. if you in chat shared how and what your job is, because others, and all the hands went down. Okay, no one is highly feasible. Okay, if it's feasible, go ahead and raise your hand. Okay, if you think it's infeasible to make a positive social impact from your current job right now, go ahead and raise your hand. Okay, and if it's highly infeasible, go ahead and raise your hand. Okay, all right, great. So how do you do this? How might you get to the point where every week you feel that you are making a positive social impact from your job? I am going to draw heavily from the research of two academics, Amy Ranusky and Jane Dutton. And what they discovered was that people who perform best at their jobs and who have a more positive relationship to their job, so they're happier at their job, are the ones that do what they call job crafting. And that means that essentially they're messing with their jobs. One of the ways that they mess with their jobs is that they infuse it with more social purpose, with more social good. So an example of this is they were looking at janitors. They were studying janitors in a hospital. And as you can imagine, most janitors didn't say they loved their job. You know, they are mopping floors and scrubbing, bathtubs or something like that. But there were these bright spots, these exceptions. And one of these janitors, the bright spots, what they learned about him was that he viewed his job not just as cleaning the floor, but when he was in the room of patients that had no one visit, he would make it a point to converse, because he said, they're in a hospital room, no one has come to visit them as far as I can see in a week or two, and I can brighten their day. And what Jane Dutton and Amy Ranusky realized is that we as humans have been doing this to our jobs for a very long time. We have been messing with our jobs in order to have them essentially like fit better with our human spirit. So let me introduce to you job purposing, which is essentially that. It's basically taking your job, whatever your job is right now. You might be an auditor, or you might be a driver, or you might be a pilot, and infusing it with more social impact so that you get all those benefits that we talked about of being healthier and being happier and being more productive. If you come from the world of corporate social responsibility or employee volunteering, one way to look at job purposing is that you take that component of engaging employees in the corporate social responsibility or volunteering, and you meld it into the job. So now it's hard to tell when an employee is volunteering and when they are just doing their job. Let me give you an example of this. For example, this is a 19-year-old who works at Vans. It's a shoe store, surfing and longboarding, skateboarding type longboarding, shoe store. And he came back from work one day and he said, there was this kid that came in today and he was very chubby and he was interested in longboarding, but he felt really insecure about it. So I took the extra time to tell him my story about how I used to be chubby, and actually it was when I got active that I shed all that weight and got fit and felt much better about myself. And I realized that my job can be interesting, and that I can, anytime a kid comes in there that has that issue, that has that chubbiness issue, I can actually help them with the store, with everything that we sell, get beyond that. So if you think about it, this youth's name who told me this, his name is Ty. If you think about it, what Ty is doing here is he is taking on the social cause of lack of fitness in youth, and he is promoting that in his everyday job. And he actually has no idea what I do for a living. And I told him, oh my God, Ty, you purposed your job. And he's like, is that a thing that adults do? And I said, well, not enough, but yes. So that's an example of job purposing. Let me give you a few more examples, but I'm going to give you these examples with the tactics. So there's 4 main tactics to job purposing, and they spell out DARE. The first thing you can do is deepen your service. And that's exactly what Ty did. So his job is customer service. He just did it in a deeper way that then contributed more than simply selling the product for a profit for the owners of the company, right? So he brought into his work this thought that, this vision that, wow, any child can be fit. Any youth can be fit, and I can help them do that. That's social purpose. So one is to just deepen what you do. The second tactic is you can just sprinkle a social good element on top of your job. An example of this is there's a manager at Bayer Crop Science, and his job was safety. And so he was a safety officer. And at Bayer Crop Science, the way they keep the workplace safe, a big component of it is to fill out these insight cards. And all an insight card is here's a little bit of insight on what's happening on safety. And it could be good, it could be bad, it can be neutral, but the whole safety program depends on these cards because this is what tells them what's going on in the workplace. A worker fills out an insight card by saying, I'm going to fill out this card here because I noticed that Mary wore a hard hat the entire time we were in this part of this wing of the plant. Or I noticed that Fred, was standing too close to the yellow line or whatever. So this manager decided, he was trying to get people to fill out the insight cards because, again, this is core to their whole safety program. But why would somebody fill out an insight card? Why take the time, whether it's good or bad? You need an incentive. And so the incentive he came up with was every time that an employee completes an insight card, we will donate to the local pantry, which they were already partners of. In fact, they use their warehouse for food, and their forklifts to move food around for them and everything. So they said, so now what this manager did to his job was instead of saying, please, please, please fill out the insight cards, he said, hey, every time you fill out an insight card, the local pantry that you know well because you already volunteer there is going to get I can't remember what the donation was, another $1, let's say. And lo and behold, the insight card completion process went up to over 300%. And that very next year, that plant was the safest plant in all of Bayer. So what this manager did was simply say, this is what I do every day. Is there a way to fold a social good element in? A third job purposing tactic is to replace an activity with a social good version. Instead of that summer picnic that you're doing, does it make sense for, the team building? Does it make sense to go landscape a school? The fourth one is, can you expand who you serve to a disadvantaged population? if you're a manager and you need to hire a few temps for, whatever, the accounting season, so you're essentially, you're, I see managers anyway, in being in service to their team. Maybe it makes sense to instead of just hiring any temp, hire disabled individuals, war veterans. So now you're doing what you normally do, but you're expanding it to a disadvantaged population, and now you've brought social purpose into the job. Another example is if you're a hairdresser, for example, might you serve women who are battling cancer and do that free or for a reduced cost or something like that. So just encourage participation from a disadvantaged population so that you can serve them, or just straight out expand your service to that population. Okay, so now let's come up with some examples here, because job purposing is about taking something that you do at work and, again, messing with it, getting a little brave and moving the edges around a little bit, looking at it from a different perspective so that it has more purpose. So let's take something that we all do, email writing. Is there a way to bring purpose into this, to essentially job purpose through your email writing? Well, sure. One thing, deepen your service. Maybe you can include in mass emails that you send out, or emails every now and then, is a health tip. Now you're helping people be healthier. Maybe you can add a signature, and I had one like this for a few weeks, just last month, where you are highlighting a charitable organization that does great work. Now you're doing marketing for a cause. You're doing marketing for a charitable organization. You've got social purpose in there. Maybe you can replace the email itself with something more purposeful. And that might be like, instead of sending that email, maybe make Thursday mornings, every email you're going to send, say, instead of sending this, maybe I should call and check in on people. Not just call and say exactly what's in the email, but say, hey, how's it going? I know that, it's the transition that you've been through has been hard. I just wanted to check in on you. I actually had a manager do this to me for years. Actually, he still does. It's a client, and it's wonderful. It completely makes my day that somebody called and checked in on me on something. Expand who you serve to a disadvantaged population. How might we apply that to an email? So maybe that's, again, on Thursday mornings, you say, in addition to all your emails is like that you normally send, maybe you make it a point to just send a friendly email to that person at the office that lost their spouse, or that recently learned that their child is autistic, that has some sort of hardship. So just even on your email, just your everyday activity of sending emails, you can infuse it with a little bit more social purpose. Let's take another task. Let's say it's parking cars. How might you deepen your service? So you're either a parking attendant or a valet attendant. What if you decided, well, I'm going to help with safety. So I'm going to take one of those the gauges that measure tire tread, and I'm going to measure it on all the cars here. And I'll leave them a note either way. Hey, we went ahead and we measured your tire tread and it looks great. Good job. Or maybe it's the note is, hey, we measured your tire tread, and you might want to take a look at that or get that looked at. And then you could do like a little, safety information. That, did you know that X% of accidents would be prevented if, people had good tread, or whatever the statistic is. Do a little bit of education there. So now here's a person who parks cars, and they can bring the sense of purpose into their job and to make a meaningful social impact out there. What if, how might you add a social good component to parking cars? So you could say, no one ever wants to go to the last level. And then you could say, hey, if you park up there, we're going to give $1 to a charitable cause. So there you just kind of folded in a way to think of a societal issue and act on it and contribute to it in your everyday work. You can replace an activity with your social good version. So in parking cars, maybe the last thing as people drive off is you just say have a great day. Is there a way to replace that phrase so that it has a social impact? So maybe instead of just saying have a great day is, hey, I hope you have a great day. If you've never heard of them, did you know that in this building there's a great nonprofit organization called this? You should check them out on the web. They do amazing work and they deserve all our support. That's simple. Can you expand who you serve to a disadvantaged population? Maybe offer free valet to anybody who is taking care of a sick member of their family or who has a disabled family member. So you can say, hey, if you're a caretaker, you don't have to park your own car. You can go ahead in and we will valet for you. And, who are you taking care of and how are they doing? And you've brought all this humanity into the job. Okay, different example. Let's say you're in charge of training. How might you job purpose that? Well, deepen your service. That is blank because I couldn't come up with anything. And I left that like that just to show that you only need one of these at a time, and not every job task is going to have an easy tactic to go with it, but hopefully with 4 different tactics at least one will work. How might you add a social element a good social good element to training? Well, what if you say, let's say there's a training and the small groups go and do their work. What if you say the small group that does the best work will get a donation card and they can give $100 to their charity of choice? There's a way to add the social good element. Can you replace an activity in the training that now promotes positive social impact? KPMG does this with their training of new accountants. So instead of having the dry on paper case study of organization X does this and yada yada, they invite a nonprofit in, and then the class works on their real books. And the results, well, the evaluations of the trainings went significantly up when they did that. But also they feel that actually the training is more likely to stick when you're working with, a real live nonprofit that has consequences, whether you truly help them or not, versus a hypothetical. So that might be a way to job purpose a training. Expand who you serve to a disadvantaged population. So if you have slots that are not filled by your own employees, maybe you can invite a nonprofit staff member to attend that training. So that training might be communications or leadership, and you can have a local executive director of a nonprofit attend. So these are some ways to bring purpose to your own job. I want to spend just a tiny bit of time on the team element of this. So can you do this for a whole team? And the answer is absolutely. And in fact, when you do it at this level, then obviously your impact goes up, but it also allows you to be more strategic with the company. Here's an example from HP. when salespeople at HP go to sell the cloud solution to a business, those who choose to don't just sell the technology solution, but they also have the opportunity to help that business with their environmental sustainability. They go in and they say, hey, we have this great technology solution. It's the best in the industry, yada, yada. And by the way, I'm a trained eco advocate, which means that I've learned to apply the green practices, the environmental practices, the sustainable practices that HP is well known for and applies to its own business, so that I can help you reduce your carbon footprint or reduce the amount of solid waste that you produce. And by the way, it will also lower your energy costs and so on. Now, when an HP sales rep goes to work every day, they're also making the planet more sustainable. And this is in partnership with the World Wildlife Fund. Let's take a completely different job and see what we can do with the whole team. This is Caesars Entertainment, another client, and their housekeeping staff. They collect soap, and most people do not use an entire bar of soap in 1 or 2 days. Or if you do, don't admit it. But what Caesars Entertainment tells its housekeeping staff is this is voluntary, but if you want, collect the soap. We will give it to Clean the World Foundation. They will sterilize it, and they will put it in the hands of individuals who are at risk of contracting and dying from preventable diseases. Now that housekeeping staff, when they go into work every day, they are helping to reduce the number of children that die from preventable diseases every day, which tragically right now is at over 6,000. And not only are they doing an immense amount of social good through their everyday job, but they feel differently about their jobs. So at both of these companies, which is one reason why I mentioned these two examples, they have data showing that there's a relationship between participation in these job purposing efforts and how likely they are to exert more effort at work or how engaged they are. I also have access to data from 5 companies in Canada that we looked at these types of relationships, and we know that those who see their work as meaningful are more engaged. So remember that list of all the positive things that being pro-social or helping others and helping causes does for us? They translate into the workplace into higher engagement and productivity. That was actually on that list. We know from Accenture that those who feel that their job is not purposeful are very likely to be disengaged employees. So these are the employees, that do the minimal amount of effort to keep their jobs, have a bad attitude, make everybody else's attitude worse, and they might be, stealing, paper from the supply closet. Those are those employees because they don't feel they have purpose in their job. I mean, that's not the only thing that leads to disengagement, but it is a driver of disengagement. Engaged employees, on the other hand, are the ones who feel they have purpose. Again, there are other factors that affect engagement, but purpose is among the very top ones. There's lots of academic research on different aspects of this, and a lot of it is finally making it into these readable books versus these obtuse academic studies. If you only read one book this year that has something to do with this, I would recommend Give and Take by Adam Grant. But all of these are slightly different. They come from it from different angles, and they're all good. So if email me if you have any questions about books. I'm kind of nerdy and I love talking about that. And there's more external evidence showing this link between a job that has a social impact, that has purpose, and engagement and performance and well-being. So when we talk about job purposing for a whole team or a whole company or a whole department, we're talking about a very powerful management tool. Just a few things about it. There's ways to do this great, and I guess I should say, and then there's ways to do this that aren't quite as effective. I'm not going to go through these, but there are 6 drivers that if you follow these drivers, then your job purposing will really thrive and lead to those workplace positive elements like higher engagement and productivity and teamwork, and also to lead to higher social impact. There's more information on doing this that you can download, which is one reason I didn't cover all those drivers. And so here's the link, and this is free. This is a essential job purposing paper, and it focuses on job purposing for an entire team. So I'd like to close with just a 30,000 foot view on job purposing. And we're talking about changing an email signature, or maybe including a nonprofit partner in a training. These might seem like very modest acts. They are a fraction of our workday. They might live on the thin edges of our job. But don't interpret this to mean that these small acts are insignificant. If all you can do is that, it's still incredibly powerful. If all you can do is help a single mother who has ailing parents get through her day, that is something. Similarly, don't think that these small acts won't have the power to change how you view your everyday job, how your job suits you, how it feels. A little bit of purpose goes a long way. Researchers gave $5 to University of British Columbia students to donate. And then, of course, the researchers. So there was a group that that didn't donate $5. And those that did donate the $5 were significantly happier at the end of the day. This is a $5 donation, and Canadian $5 to boot. And that had a significant impact on their happiness. Small acts of purpose can affect us in surprisingly large ways. We are so parched for purpose at work that even a trickle of this helps. So don't hesitate, because what you can do is only a small act. More importantly, if job purposing is just a small step towards good, it's not necessarily just that small step. The reason I say that is that, sometimes we take a step, and then we take the next step in the same direction that we've been going all along. But some steps are in a different direction. They're a pivot. And that's what job purposing is. So job purposing changes our exploration, what we pay attention to a more productive landscape. It shifts us away from viewing work as toil to benefit, corporate owners, as if it were even possible to truly do well on that if we doing work that doesn't match our humanity. But this limited view of work as toil that helps, the machinery of business, which has now been proven to be entirely unproductive, is where most of our workplaces are. And what job purposing does is it pivots us toward the possibility of work that is worthy of us, that is worthy of our human aspirations. It pivots us to make the first step, to take the first step in a journey towards meaningful work. Thank you very much for attending. I will pass it over to Holly and see if we have any questions.
Well, thank you, Bea. That was so gratifying to see that we can do good to get good, or get good to do good, however you want to put it. Very interesting, and I do have some questions that I have collected from people. The first one is, what can the books you recommend tell us that you didn't?
Oh, a lot. So, this is such a distillation of everything that we have learned in the last 25 years. So pretty much all the findings that I put up there, we were clueless about. In the 1970s, 1980s, and the 90s, we started going, whoa. And, we have a whole branch of psychology called positive psychology that covers a lot of this. So what you've heard is the distillation of what we can bring concretely to the job, and it can, hopefully transform your job and your relationship and, help the world out there. But there is so much richness in what these amazing researchers have learned in the last number of years, that if you're interested in this at all, those books will cover many, many things. So I'll just give you one example. I'm focusing on work here. The book co-authored by Mike Norton, he's at Harvard Business School faculty. The book is called Happy Money. They cover, so what they did was they looked at all the research and they say, if you don't think money can buy you happiness, you don't know how to spend it, which I think is a great line. And they cover the 5 ways to spend money that actually truly bring happiness. Of course, the reason that book is on my slide is because one of them is you spend it on other people. And in fact, the $5 study comes from there. But they have 4 other ways of spending your time or money in ways that enrich you. So we've learned a lot through academic research on when as humans we are at our best. And those books really kind of help us understand that. So if anybody is kind of a nerdy reader, and most of them are in audiobooks as well, I really do recommend actually every single one of those books. But and they are all enlightening in their own right, kind of focusing on something slightly different than what I'm focusing on.
Okay. I have someone who asks, do you have any examples of companies that integrate a job purposing into job descriptions? I've been talking with some groups about this for broader societal impact. Just didn't know if you know of companies that do it well.
Yeah, it's an emerging field, so I wish I could rattle off here are 6 companies. But Patagonia, not surprisingly, is way ahead on this. So if you work on the floor, in the the retail floor at Patagonia and you sell fleece and, you know, everything else that they sell. So if you're familiar with Patagonia, it's outdoor clothing, right? Your job description, your actual job description, and I'm going off of memory, but if the words aren't exact, the spirit is accurate. Your job description is to understand the product, to be able to communicate it to customers, and third or fourth on that list of things to do is to be an environmental activist. So their job description already has the social impact in there. Now, of course, this totally makes sense for Patagonia because they're selling clothing for people to go out there and enjoy the canyons and the mountains and the rivers. And so for them to say, your job as the person who's serving these individuals enjoying the canyons and the rivers and the mountains or the outdoors is to preserve this. So a Patagonia employee on their everyday job, if somebody, and this happened to me, so I snowboard and I got my snowboarding jacket at Patagonia, and when I bought that, I learned about mountain goats and how these corridors of mountain goats were being threatened by development. And what that meant was that they couldn't get to the place where they mated, to the place to where they ate, and how this was threatening their environment. So next thing I know, I'm signing petitions for these mountain goats to protect these mountain goats. They educated me on that via the transaction of buying clothing. I mean, if that's not job purposing, if that's not incorporating a societal good into something that you know, just consumption of, you know, goods is something that we generally think is something very light and frivolous. If, you know, then I don't know, you know, what is. So Patagonia is an example of a company that absolutely, probably in every single job description, they folded in the societal good.
Okay.
Another, I'll just give a slightly different example. Campbell's Soup. Everybody who works at that company has as a requirement in their job description, and I'm not going to get the wording right here, but essentially to do something good for the community. And so there, you know, that's a more kind of traditional way. I like to give an example different from Patagonia because most people don't work at workplaces that have such a kind of broad view of what is possible from the workplace. But Campbell's Soup, there's a Fortune 500, large company, been around forever, in many senses very traditional, and they've managed to put in everybody's job description an element of having a positive societal impact as well.
Okay. I have a question that says, what do you mean by work native? That was on your slide.
Okay. Hey, somebody was reading. That's fantastic. Yeah, I only spent like 2 seconds on that.
Do you want to bring that back up? That slide back up?
Oh yeah, I can
It's
do
easy
that.
enough.
That's a good idea. That's a very good idea. Let's see. So that came in the drivers. So if you're going to do work purposing for a team, and sorry if I'm making you dizzy with this, I'll get there. So there are 6 elements that make it powerful. So work native means that the social good that you're doing lives comfortably in that work. The Patagonia example I gave when I said, of course, this totally makes sense for Patagonia because they're helping people enjoy the outdoors. So their emphasis on environment makes sense for them. It's native to their work. Unlike, for example, I'm doing work with an insurance company, and they've been very involved in helping whales. And that is not a good fit for their work. So it's a little bit uncomfortable. If it's insurance, maybe it should be helping, children who grieve, who are grieving the loss of a loved one, or, financial literacy or something like that. And the reason this is important is, especially when you do it with a group, so like if you're trying to job purpose for your entire team, is that the more the social impact feels like it's part of your job, it's part of your everyday workday, then the more it will affect your relationship with the job. The bigger the bounce in engagement, and we have data on this, the bigger the bounce in engagement, the more the more pride they're going to feel in their employer if they feel that it's connected to their job. If their everyday job is accounting, and then the way you try to job purpose is to go to a soup kitchen, let's say, that has nothing to do with the job, it's actually still a great thing to do. So don't stop doing it just because I'm saying this. But now when that employee goes home and their spouse says, "Hey, honey, how was your day?" They're going to go, "Oh, work, accounting. Oh my God, it's tax season. It was awful. But I loved serving, these families at the shelter." You can see that they had a good day because they went to the shelter, but it didn't change their view of their job. It was still a grind. If, on the other hand, you're the Patagonia employee, it's like, "How was your day?" It's like, "Oh, you're not going to believe it. I helped so many people understand how important it was for these wildlife corridors to, not go by the wayside." Because it's related to work. So that's a very long explanation for work native, but hopefully it made some sense. And if not, what's in the PDF hopefully will.
Okay. Bea, how do you suggest getting middle managers on board with job purposing?
Yeah, that's a great question. That is often where this stalls, I should say, because middle managers are the ones they have quotas, they have to meet these quotas. We don't have time for all this fluffy stuff. We got to meet our numbers. What I would, I'll share a little bit of work that I'm doing with Toyota. So in order to help what's called actually it was Caroline Barlerin from Twitter who I think named it the frozen middle. To help, defrost the frozen middle there, they invited the kind of the top management, the 200 top managers, to presentations. So I gave the first one, and it was an educational series. And they actually measured 8 to 12 months later whether these presentations move the needle, like whether they thought that doing this sort of stuff was actually a good thing for their teams. And they know that it did. It moved it in a big way. So I share this because a little bit can go a long way with senior managers and middle managers, but you have to educate them. It can't just be like, here's the next greatest thing, do it. It has to, what made these presentations work was that they met the managers where they were. So they said, okay, you care about engagement, you care about meeting your numbers, you care about these things. Here is how this can help. Here is how incorporating societal impact into people's everyday jobs actually helps with that. And that's what helped move the needle. So education would be my number one suggestion to get middle managers.
Okay. I have someone who says, if we open our training slots up to nonprofits for free, don't employees think that it's the company that's doing the social good, not the employee himself?
Sure. But, you know, um, that's a good thing, right? I mean, I think we're trying to blur this line between like the institution and the employee, right? So we're trying to soften institutions. You know, that's kind of what Patagonia has done. Like the institution writes the job description, but the institution is now is a much more human place. So it's less institutional and more human. So I think that that's actually fine, and that's a good thing. And I think that also employees understand that behind the company there was a person who said, "Oh, hey, somebody thought of inviting the executive directors of Big Brothers Big Sisters to attend this training, the local executive director or whatever." So I I think that the answer might be yes, but I'm not sure that's a bad thing.
Okay. I have someone who writes, I'd like to thank Bea for the great talk and for doing so much to help bring out the positive
Hmm.
aspects of the business world. His question is, have you found any pieces of evidence or anecdotes or examples that have been especially effective in winning over skeptics to the cause of purposefulness? I'm thinking of people like old school executives. Is
Yeah.
there anything you've found that seems to capture their imagination?
Um, yeah, P1 usually does because, well, I'm often in front of exactly that group. So these are the men, overwhelmingly, sadly, who run corporate America. I think the HP example of eco advocates works. It has hard data. So you guys saw that slide that engagement is higher for them. HP is considered traditional, and everybody can relate to a sales job. So I would say that one works really well. You have to hit them right away with the metrics of this. So especially that group, and you're still not going to convince the majority of them, at least not the first time. So what I find that the path to moving forward with that group is you present it. For the most part, they don't buy it. But there's often one person in the group that's like, this is intriguing, and it actually resonates with my own experience. And then you move forward with them. So they're like the early adopters. And when that succeeds, and I can't name the company, but I'm thinking of one in particular. So this was one property that succeeded, and we showed a 3% higher revenue for that property. Once that slide with 3% higher revenue for their own company, for one of their own properties, was in front of the other execs, and they're like, oh, well, why don't we keep moving forward with this? So now we're rolling it out to two other properties. So don't expect that you can have a flawless presentation, and it's compelling and it's engaging and it's got the numbers that are available and all of that, and they still won't be convinced. It just takes it's an iterative process. So I would just work with those who do jump on what we call the early adopters in change management, and then make sure they succeed, and then they're the ones that will convince the next group, and then the next group will convince a bigger group until you get to like the majority, and then you engage the entire bell curve of skeptics.
Thank you, Bea. And I have a person who's written in and says that he really likes the DARE method for job purposing. And I have a few more questions here, but we are running out of time. Um, so I'll just ask his quickly. And he says, I'm curious, how has your work in the science of job purposing evolved or changed your view of the role employees play in the workplace?
Oh, it's made me so hopeful because so my short story, a short story of my not so short story, my not so short history is, I mean, I help companies with their corporate social responsibility, and I love doing that. But you know, I work with Fortune 500s mostly, and it's only a handful of people in the entire company that are doing corporate social responsibility. So it's not a very strong, you know, lever for change. It's not. And what job purposing has allowed me to do is to realize how much power any employee in a company has to shift the trajectory of that company in the way, you know, or of that team at first, of that department. So it's a little bit, it's a lever from, you know, the inside. And really all it takes is there's a little bit of courage. And then once you start applying it, it's a little addictive. And then, but it's I don't know, it makes me very happy, as you can probably tell from my presentation of it, and I appreciate that question.
Yeah, well, that's a wonderful way to end that. It's so heartening, and I'd like to thank you again on behalf of EarthShift Global and all of our listeners today and listeners of the future for coming to speak with us today.
It was my pleasure, Holly. Thank you very much. And I hear the one clap. Thank you.
Okay. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Oh, I'm sorry. Before we end, I just have a plug for our next one. Please stay tuned. We've got another one coming in April 18th on Tuesday with Mark Hujibrix on the recipe, if anybody's interested.
Ooh,
So
that sounds great.
Hope to see hear some of you then. All right, and thank you again, Bea, and I will close this webinar. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.